A dense fog spread through the forest when a child was born, under the watchful gaze of a shadowy creature. A massive black bear emerged from the shadows, marking the beginning of an inexplicable alliance. But as the child grows, ancient secrets begin to awaken with supernatural signs. Now, between fate and sacrifice, the line between guardian and curse threatens to crumble. Before listening to this exciting story, remember to subscribe to the channel. The mist crept between the ancient trees like a living blanket, snaking through the branches and hiding the secrets of the old American forest. It was a moonless night, and the air vibrated with an inexplicable energy that made the leaves whisper forgotten stories. In a small wooden cabin built in a forest clearing, the cries of a midwife broke the mystical silence. Sarah, an elderly woman of Native American descent who had brought hundreds of children into the world, had never witnessed a birth like this. The air inside the room had become dense, almost electric, and the candles flickered without any breeze. "It's coming!" exclaimed Sarah, while holding the hands of the first-time mother, a young woman named Emily, whose pale face contrasted with her long black hair. "Something is different. I can feel it." At the exact moment when the baby's first cry resonated in the cabin, a deep and powerful roar shook the entire forest. Nightbirds took flight in panic, and dogs in the surrounding area began to howl in unison. Emily, exhausted but conscious, looked towards the window with a mixture of terror and awe. There, among the mist that swirled as if it had a life of its own, two amber eyes shone in the darkness. The figure of a black bear, larger than any they had seen before, gradually materialized. The animal showed no aggression. On the contrary, it seemed to be standing guard. Sarah, who had wrapped the newborn in a blanket woven with ancient symbols, approached the window with the baby in her arms. The bear inclined its massive head, as if making a bow. It was then that the midwife noticed something extraordinary. On the animal's chest, a symbol glowed faintly with its own light, a mark that seemed to be engraved in its fur. "Its guardian," whispered Sarah, remembering the old legends her grandmother used to tell her about spirit guardians that took animal form. "He has come for the child." Emily, from her bed, weakly extended her arms. "My son." "Is he all right?" Sarah approached with the baby, but before handing him over, she noticed something that froze her blood. On the newborn's shoulder, a mark identical to the bear's glowed softly. "He will be called Ethan," Emily declared, ignoring the midwife's discovery. "Like his grandfather." The following days were strange in the forest. The bear did not move away from the cabin, always maintaining a respectful but vigilant distance. The inhabitants of nearby towns began to murmur about the strange phenomenon, but no one dared to get too close. Emily slowly recovered from childbirth, but something in her had changed. Her eyes, once lively and cheerful, now seemed to carry the weight of ancestral knowledge. At night, when she thought no one was watching, she would go out to the cabin's porch and have long, silent conversations with Guardian, as if they shared a secret that no one else could understand. One morning, barely 3 weeks after Ethan's birth, Emily disappeared. They found her days later deep in the forest, with a peaceful expression on her face, but lifeless. There were no signs of violence. It simply seemed that her spirit had decided to leave this world, as if she had fulfilled a sacred mission by bringing Ethan to life. The news of Emily's death spread quickly through the region, attracting the attention of a woman who until then had lived anonymously in a coastal town hundreds of miles away. Olivia arrived on a rainy afternoon, her hair soaked and a steely determination in her gaze. She gave no explanations about her presence, but when her eyes met Guardian's, something seemed to click in the universe. Sarah, who had been taking care of Ethan, recognized something familiar in Olivia, as if she had been waiting for her arrival. The newcomer had visible scars on her arms, marks that seemed to tell a story of pain and survival. But the most surprising thing was how the baby reacted in her presence. Ethan, who usually cried with strangers, instantly calmed down in her arms. "I've come for him," Olivia declared, in a voice that admitted no argument. "I've dreamed of this moment for years." Sarah studied the woman for a long moment before responding. "The ancient prophecies speak of 3 intertwined souls, the chosen one, the guardian, and the protector. Do you know what you're getting into, child?" Olivia gently caressed the mark on Ethan's shoulder, and for a moment both the baby's mark and the bear's glowed in unison. "I know better than anyone," she replied with a sad smile. "I've been preparing for this my whole life." That night, as Olivia rocked Ethan in the old rocking chair of the cabin, Guardian approached closer than ever to the house. Through the window, his amber eyes seemed to contain all the wisdom of the world. The forest mist swirled around him, creating ghostly shapes that seemed to dance in the darkness. Sarah, observing the scene from the shadows, understood that she was witnessing the beginning of something extraordinary. Fate had brought these three souls together for a reason that went beyond her understanding. In the air floated a silent promise, a sacred oath between a child marked by destiny, a woman with scars that told stories of other worlds, and a bear that was much more than it appeared. The old midwife crossed herself and murmured an ancient Native American prayer. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying with it the echo of forgotten prophecies and the weight of a destiny that was just beginning to unravel. In Olivia's arms, little Ethan slept peacefully, oblivious to the extraordinary events that would mark his life and the ancestral forces that had been set in motion with his first breath. The first rays of the sun barely filtered through the thick mist when Olivia began to establish her new life in the forest cabin. With methodical and precise movements, as if she had rehearsed this moment for years, she transformed the space into a home for herself and Ethan. The wooden walls were soon covered with protective symbols that she carved herself during the nights while the baby slept. Some she recognized from her own dreams. Others seemed to emerge from an ancestral memory she didn't know she possessed. In every corner of the house, she placed small cloth bags filled with herbs, whose aroma kept restless spirits away. Sarah, who regularly visited the cabin, observed with curiosity how Olivia handled the baby with a naturalness that contradicted her apparent inexperience. "There's something about you," the old woman commented one day while preparing an herbal infusion in the kitchen. "Something that reminds me of the ancient guardians of my people." Olivia paused for a moment in her task of rocking Ethan. "What do you know about the guardians?" "Enough to recognize the marks on your arms," Sarah replied, pointing to the scars that Olivia always tried to hide. "Those aren't common wounds, they're initiation marks." The silence that followed was interrupted only by Ethan's soft snoring and the constant murmur of the forest. Outside, Guardian moved restlessly, as if the conversation disturbed him. "5 years ago," Olivia finally began, "I was living a normal life in the city. I had a job, a routine, until the dreams started. I saw this forest, this baby, and—" Her voice broke as she looked towards the window, where Guardian's amber eyes shone intensely. Sarah nodded understandingly. "And him. At first, I thought I was going crazy. The dreams were so vivid that I would wake up with the smell of pine in my nose and dirt under my nails. I started looking for answers. It took me to strange places, to even stranger people. Each step marked me," she explained, unconsciously touching the scars on her arms. As she spoke, Ethan stirred in her arms and his small fingers clung to one of the pendants Olivia wore around her neck, a black stone with golden veins that seemed to move under the light. "The last test was the hardest," Olivia continued, her gaze lost in her memories. "In an ancient temple deep in the Arizona desert, I had to face my greatest fears. I saw things that no human should see, but I also received this gift." She touched the pendant that fascinated Ethan. "They told me it would guide me to my true purpose." Sarah came closer to examine the stone more closely. "Solar obsidian," she murmured reverently. "The ancients used it to see between worlds." A distant thunder resonated in the forest, although the sky was clear. Guardian rose from his usual place and began to walk in circles around the cabin, as if sensing an invisible presence. "There's something else," Olivia said, lowering her voice. "Something I haven't told anyone. In my dreams, I see a future where Ethan—" She stopped, unable to continue. Sarah placed a wrinkled hand on Olivia's shoulder. "Some knowledge is a heavy burden, child. Not all the futures we see are destined to come true." Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. Ethan grew strong and healthy, surrounded by Olivia's fierce love and Guardian's constant protection. The bond between the three strengthened with each dawn, creating an unconventional but deeply united family. Olivia established a routine that mixed the mundane with the mystical. During the day, she cared for Ethan like any mother, but at nightfall, when the baby slept, she dedicated herself to studying ancient texts she had collected on her travels. Some were written in languages she shouldn't understand, but somehow could decipher. One particularly cold night, as Olivia studied by the fire, Ethan began to cry in a different, more urgent way. When she ran to his crib, she found that the mark on his shoulder was glowing with blinding intensity. Outside, Guardian roared with such force that the windows shook. At that moment, Olivia had her first vision since arriving at the cabin. She saw Ethan, now older, standing in a circle of ancient stones, with Guardian by his side, but the bear was no longer entirely a bear, and she was something else, something she couldn't understand. The vision left her trembling and with a metallic taste in her mouth. She hugged Ethan against her chest, while whispering words of protection she didn't know she knew. "I will protect you," she promised, "even if I have to face all the spirits in the world." That night, as Ethan finally slept peacefully, Olivia went out to the cabin's porch. Guardian approached closer than usual until she could feel his warm breath on her face. "You saw it too, didn't you?" she whispered. The bear inclined his massive head, and for a moment Olivia thought she saw a flash of humanity in his amber eyes, a recognition that went beyond the animal. In the distance, wolves began to howl, and the mist thickened around the cabin, as if the forest itself wanted to protect the secrets it held. Olivia remained on the porch until dawn, vigilant, while in her mind the threads of a destiny she was just beginning to understand intertwined. Years passed like leaves dragged by the wind, and Ethan grew surrounded by mysteries and magic. At 5 years old, the boy already showed signs that he was not like others. His connection with nature went beyond normal. Birds perched on his shoulders without fear, plants seemed to grow more vigorously in his path, and the forest mist danced around him as if responding to a silent music that only he could hear. One spring morning, as Olivia prepared breakfast, Ethan came running into the cabin, his eyes bright with excitement. "Mom, the butterflies showed me something." Olivia stopped what she was doing, giving her adopted son her full attention. She had learned to take the boy's words seriously. "What did you see, my love?" "I saw a cave, and there's something important inside." "Guardian saw it too, right?" The child looked out the window where the bear, faithful as always, nodded almost imperceptibly. That same afternoon, following Ethan's directions, they ventured deeper into the forest than Olivia usually allowed. Guardian led them, clearing a path through the vegetation. The air became denser as they advanced, charged with the weight of ancient secrets. The cave appeared before them like a black mouth on the side of a hill. Ancient symbols similar to those Olivia had carved in the cabin decorated the entrance. Some were so worn that they were barely visible, but others glowed faintly, as if they had been engraved with something more than simple stone. "The symbols. They're singing," whispered Ethan, gently touching the marks with his small fingers. Olivia felt a shiver run down her spine. She could hear it too, a soft, almost subliminal hum that seemed to emanate from the rocks themselves. Guardian remained at the entrance as if standing guard. Inside the cave, the air was surprisingly warm. The walls were covered with cave paintings that seemed to tell a story, human figures, animals, and symbols intertwined in a narrative that Olivia tried to decipher. In the center of the cave, a stone pedestal held something that made her heart stop for a moment, a figure carved in black jade, representing a bear with markings identical to Guardian's. Ethan approached the pedestal as if in a trance. "It's sad," he said, pointing to the figure. "It misses its true form." Before Olivia could stop him, the child touched the figure. At that instant, a bright light emanated from the mark on his shoulder, and the entire cave seemed to come to life. The paintings on the walls began to move, telling a story that unfolded before their eyes. An ancient warrior, marked by the gods, making a pact with forces beyond human comprehension. His transformation into a guardian beast, destined to protect a special bloodline. The cycle of births and deaths, each generation marked with the same symbol, each protected by the same guardian spirit. The vision ended as abruptly as it had begun, leaving Olivia and Ethan gasping in the dimness of the cave. From the entrance, Guardian's roar resonated like a lament. "It's him, isn't it?" asked Ethan, his eyes full of wisdom improper for his age. "Guardian was human once." Olivia nodded slowly, the pieces of the puzzle beginning to fit in her mind. "And he's been waiting all this time. Waiting for you." That night, while Ethan slept, Olivia went out to talk to Guardian. The bear looked at her with his ancient eyes, and for the first time she clearly saw the human soul trapped inside the beast. "How long have you been like this?" she whispered. "How many generations have you protected?" In response, Guardian approached and, with delicacy, touched her obsidian pendant with his muzzle. The stone glowed momentarily, and on its surface, Olivia saw reflected a series of images, centuries of history, of protection, of waiting. But she also saw something else, something that left her breathless, her own face, in another life, in another time. The following days brought more manifestations of Ethan's power. The child began to have premonitory dreams, warnings about events that had not yet occurred. One morning he woke up screaming about a storm that would destroy the nearby town. 3 days later, the strongest hurricane in decades hit the region, but thanks to his warning there were no casualties. The mark on his shoulder also began to change, slowly expanding like the roots of a tree. Olivia documented each change in a diary, along with her own observations and fragments of ancient knowledge she was collecting. One afternoon, as Ethan played in the clearing in front of the cabin, an injured deer approached limping. The boy, without hesitation, approached the animal and placed his hands on the wound. Before Olivia's astonished eyes, a soft light emanated from his palms, and the wound began to close. "How did you know how to do that?" Olivia asked later. "I don't know," Ethan replied with simplicity. "I just felt I could do it, as if someone was guiding me." That night, while reviewing her ancient texts, Olivia found a reference that chilled her blood. "The marked healer will be the bridge between worlds, but his gift comes with a price that must be paid at the appropriate time." Outside, the mist thickened around the cabin, and the distant howl of wolves sounded like a warning. Guardian, from his vigilance post, looked towards the starless sky as if he could see beyond the darkness, towards a future that was inexorably approaching. The news arrived with the town's mailman. The old Pinewood Manor, abandoned for decades, would be demolished in less than a month. For most, it was simply another ruined property. But for Olivia, the mailman's words awakened something inside her, as if a dormant memory came to life. "Why do you care so much about an old manor?" asked Ethan, now in his 8th year, noticing the unease on his protector's face. Olivia absent-mindedly caressed her obsidian pendant. "Because it's been appearing in my dreams for weeks, but I didn't understand why until now." That same afternoon, leaving Ethan under Sarah's care, Olivia ventured towards the manor. Guardian, in unprecedented behavior, decided to accompany her, momentarily abandoning his vigilance of the child. Pinewood Manor rose like a ghost of stone and wood in the middle of a nearby valley. Its walls, covered with vines and moss, retained the elegance of another era. The main gate, made of wrought iron, creaked in protest when Olivia pushed it. In the central courtyard, a dry fountain harbored bird nests, and broken tiles formed a chaotic mosaic under her feet. Guardian moved with disconcerting familiarity, as if he knew the place. "You've been here before," Olivia murmured. The bear responded by heading directly towards a side door that led to what appeared to be a library. The interior of the room was surprisingly well preserved. Carved wooden shelves covered the walls from floor to ceiling, although most of the books had been looted years ago. However, Guardian headed without hesitation towards a panel on the wall that seemed different from the others. Olivia approached, and guided by an instinct she didn't understand, pressed different points on the panel. With a dry click, a section of the wall slid open, revealing a secret compartment. Inside, wrapped in waxed cloth, she found an ancient manuscript. The yellowed pages were written in a mixture of Old English and symbols she recognized from her studies. The title, written in ink that still retained a metallic sheen, read, "Chronicles of the Dark Guardian, the Eternal Pact." With trembling hands, Olivia began to read, "In the year of our Lord 1742, I, Jonathan Blackwood, write this testimony of the extraordinary events I have witnessed and of which I am now a part. What began as an expedition to document the beliefs of the natives has become my curse and my salvation. The pages that followed revealed an astonishing story. Jonathan, an English chronicler, had discovered an ancient Native American ritual that allowed a human being to transform into a spiritual guardian. The ritual was designed to protect a special bloodline, marked by the gods, that was born every certain number of generations. The price of transformation is high, the manuscript continued. The guardian renounces his human form and his mortality, condemned to wander between two worlds until his mission is fulfilled. But there is something else, something the elders did not reveal to me until it was too late. Olivia felt the air grow heavier as she read. Guardian had sat beside her, his eyes fixed on the pages as if he could read them too. The true nature of the pact is darker than I imagined. The Guardian not only protects, but also contains something within himself, something that must not be released. Each time the Marked One is born, the seal weakens, and the Guardian must renew his sacrifice or risk the contained evil escaping. The last pages of the manuscript contain detailed diagrams of the transformation ritual and a series of prophecies about the last Marked One, the one who would have the power to break the cycle or condemn it forever. "My dear Rebecca," Olivia read on the last page, and her heart skipped a beat as she recognized the name of Ethan's mother. "If you are reading this, it means our paths have crossed as predicted. The child you carry in your womb is special, more than you can imagine. Seek the woman with the sacred scars. She will know what to do when the time comes." Olivia closed the manuscript, her mind spinning with the implications of what she had just read. She looked at Guardian, who now seemed more human than ever in his gestures. "It was you," she whispered. "You were Jonathan Blackwood." The bear inclined his head in a gesture of confirmation. The mark on his chest glowed faintly, and for a moment Olivia thought she saw the silhouette of a man superimposed on the animal's figure. Suddenly, a child's scream resonated in her mind. Ethan needed her. Without wasting time, she tucked the manuscript into her bag and ran back to the cabin, with Guardian on her heels. They found Ethan in the midst of a crisis. His mark was glowing with blinding intensity, and objects around him were floating in the air. Sarah was trying to calm him without success. "I saw something terrible," the boy cried upon seeing Olivia. "I saw what's inside Guardian." Olivia hugged the child while exchanging a meaningful look with the bear. The manuscript in her bag seemed to weigh a ton, loaded with secrets she was just beginning to understand. The revelation of the manuscript triggered a series of events that would forever change the dynamic between Olivia, Ethan, and Guardian. The nights became more intense, plagued with visions that assaulted both Olivia and the child, as if the knowledge contained in those ancient pages had opened a door that could no longer be closed. On a particularly agitated night, as the full moon bathed the forest with its silver light, Ethan woke up screaming. His eyes, normally brown, glowed with an amber hue identical to Guardian's. "I saw everything, Mom," he exclaimed between sobs. "I saw how he was before, when he was Jonathan." Olivia sat next to him on the bed, while Guardian approached closer than ever to the room's window. "Tell me what you saw, my love." "He was a tall man with a black beard and sad eyes," Ethan began, his voice acquiring a strangely mature tone. "He was in an ancient temple, surrounded by Native American elders. They warned him not to do it, that the price was too high, but he didn't listen." As Ethan spoke, Olivia felt the room fading around her, and suddenly she found herself inside the child's vision. The Native American temple rose majestically in the middle of the desert, its stones gleaming under the torchlight. Jonathan Blackwood, then a man in his 30s, stood in the center of a ritual circle. The elders chanted in an ancient language, and the air vibrated with supernatural energy. "The evil must be contained," said the oldest of the priests. "The beast that threatens to destroy the balance between worlds must be sealed. But the price—" "I will pay it," Jonathan interrupted with determination. "I have seen in your prophecies what will happen if we don't do this. I have seen the marked children who will come, the bloodline that must be protected. Once the transformation begins, there is no turning back," warned another priest. "Your humanity will be sacrificed. You will become the guardian, the container, until the last marked one arrives and the cycle is completed." Jonathan nodded, and the priests began the ritual. The pain was indescribable as his human form merged with the essence of the guardian beast. But the worst was not the physical transformation, but feeling how the evil entity he had to contain settled inside him, a dark presence he would have to keep controlled for centuries. The vision changed, showing different moments throughout the centuries, Guardian protecting different marked children, each with a tragic destiny, each strengthening the seal that kept the darkness contained. When the vision ended, Olivia found Ethan trembling in her arms. Outside, Guardian emitted a sound that was half roar, half human lament. "But there's more," whispered Ethan. "I saw you, Mom, in another life." Olivia felt her heart stop for a moment. "What do you mean?" "You were one of them, one of the marked ones. But something went wrong. Guardian couldn't save you that time, and that's why you're here again now, to try again." The scars on Olivia's arms began to burn, and the symbols on them glowed faintly. Fragments of memories she didn't know she had began to surface in her mind. A previous life, an unfulfilled destiny, a promise of return. "That's why I found you," Olivia said, finally understanding. "That's why I knew where to look, what to do." That night, while Ethan finally slept, Olivia went out to the porch to confront Guardian. The bear looked at her with a mixture of sadness and recognition. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked quietly. "Why didn't you make me remember before?" Guardian approached and, with surprising gentleness for such a large creature, touched with his muzzle the place where, in her previous life, the mark had been. At that moment, memories flooded her like an avalanche. She in another era, as a young marked woman, Jonathan still human protecting her. The ritual that went wrong, the promise that they would meet again. Her last breath, swearing that she would return to complete what had been left unfinished. "All this time," Olivia murmured, tears running down her cheeks. "You've been waiting for me to remember." A distant thunder resonated in the forest, and the mist began to swirl around them in an unnatural way. In the room, Ethan stirred in his sleep, his mark glowing softly. Olivia looked towards the starry sky, aware that fate had woven a much more complex web than she had imagined. She wasn't just a protector. She was part of a story that had been unfolding for centuries, and now finally all the pieces were beginning to fall into place. The change began during a moonless night, when the air seemed denser than usual and the stars shone with supernatural intensity. Ethan, now 7 years old, suddenly woke up, his eyes fixed on the window where Guardian mounted his eternal vigil. "It's happening," whispered the boy, waking Olivia. "The seal is weakening." Outside, Guardian had risen on his hind legs, his imposing figure silhouetted against the night sky. The mark on his chest glowed with blinding intensity, and his fur seemed to ripple as if it were made of living shadows. Olivia and Ethan ran outside just in time to witness something extraordinary. The bear's form began to fluctuate, as if it were made of mist and light. At times, the silhouette of a man was superimposed over the beast, and at others, both forms seemed to merge into something completely new. "Jonathan!" Olivia shouted, advancing towards the transforming creature. "Fight against it!" A roar that was half human, half beast shook the forest. The transformation stopped halfway, leaving Guardian in a hybrid form, still mostly bear, but with unmistakably human features in his eyes and expression. "Olivia!" He spoke for the first time in centuries, his voice hoarse and deep like the rumble of the earth. "The time approaches. The seal. I can't maintain it for much longer." Ethan approached without fear, touching Guardian's fur that now seemed to be made of solidified shadows. "I can see it inside you," said the child, "the darkness it contains. It's awakening." The transformation continued throughout the night, like waves that came and went. At times, Jonathan emerged enough to speak, sharing fragments of crucial knowledge. The original ritual had a dual purpose, he explained during one of these moments, not only to protect the marked ones, but to contain an ancient entity, a being of pure chaos that the natives called the Devourer of Light. "Why is this happening now?" asked Olivia, holding Ethan's hand. "Because he is different," replied Jonathan Guardian, looking at the child. "He is the last of the line, the most powerful. His presence is weakening the seal faster than ever." A cold wind blew through the clearing, bringing with it whispers in forgotten languages. The shadows around Guardian seemed to come to life, dancing and twisting as if trying to break free. "In my previous life," said Olivia, remembering, "we tried to do something. Something that went wrong." "We tried to break the cycle," Jonathan confirmed, his voice mixing more and more with the bear's growl. "We thought we could free the Guardian without releasing what it contains. We failed, and you paid the price with your life." Ethan, who had been unusually silent, suddenly spoke. "But now it's different. Now we are three." The mark on the child's shoulder glowed in response, and for a moment all the protective symbols carved in the cabin shone in unison. The obsidian stone on Olivia's neck vibrated with ancient energy. "The manuscript," Ethan continued, "speaks of a prophecy. When the last marked one unites with the Guardian and the reborn Protector, the cycle can be broken without releasing the darkness." Guardian roared in pain as another wave of transformation shook him. This time his form changed more dramatically. His fur became translucent, revealing the mark on his chest that now seemed to be engraved in his very essence. "There's something else," Jonathan said through the pain. "Something I never told you, Olivia. The reason why you were chosen to be reborn." But before he could finish, an explosion of dark energy emanated from his body, forcing him back into his complete bear form. The air filled with static electricity, and the forest mist swirled violently around them. Olivia felt her scars burning, and new symbols began to appear on her skin, glowing with their own light. Ethan extended his hand towards Guardian, and a thread of golden light seemed to connect his mark with that of the Guardian. "It's beginning," whispered the child. "The end of the cycle." The night ended with Guardian recovering his bear form, but something had fundamentally changed. His fur now seemed to contain entire galaxies, and his eyes alternated between animal amber and Jonathan's human brown. As dawn tinged the sky pink, the three remained together in the clearing, each aware that they had crossed a point of no return. Guardian's transformation was only the beginning. The real challenge was just starting. News about the strange events in the forest began to spread like wildfire. First, it was the locals who noticed the changes. Unexplainable lights during the night, animals behaving unusually, and above all, the increasingly noticeable presence of a bear that seemed to glow under the moonlight. One morning, as Olivia was collecting herbs at the edge of the forest, she noticed footprints that didn't belong to any animal. Hiker boots, too new and too organized to be from simple lost wanderers. Sarah arrived that afternoon with worrying news. "Strangers have come to town," the old woman warned, her face marked with concern. "They're asking questions about the forest, about the bear, and about the boy." "What kind of questions?" Olivia asked, while watching Ethan play in the clearing, protected by Guardian's constant presence. "Ancient questions," Sarah replied, lowering her voice. "Questions that only those who know the old legends would know to ask. They speak of portals and hidden powers." That night, while Ethan slept, Olivia found marks carved into the trees near the cabin, symbols she recognized from the manuscript, but distorted, as if someone had tried to replicate them without understanding their true meaning. "They are hunters of the occult," Guardian growled, his voice mixing with the night wind. "I've seen them before, throughout the centuries. They seek the power I contain, believing they can control it." The following days brought more signs of the hunter's presence. Hidden traps appeared in the forest, not designed for common animals, but constructed with ritual symbols and materials. Olivia deactivated them one by one, silently thanking the knowledge her scars had granted her. One afternoon, as Ethan was practicing his healing abilities with an injured deer, a shot resonated through the forest. The bullet, charged with engraved symbols, grazed Guardian, leaving a trail of bluish light in the air. "Inside!" Olivia shouted, running towards Ethan. The boy, however, remained calm, his eyes fixed in the direction from where the shot had come. "They can't harm us," he said, with a certainty that made Olivia pause. "They don't understand what's really happening here." As if to confirm his words, the mark on his shoulder glowed intensely, and an invisible wave of energy expanded through the clearing. Birds took flight, and the mist thickened until it formed an impenetrable barrier around the cabin. The hunters emerged from among the trees, 5 figures dressed in dark clothes, carrying weapons modified with ancient symbols. Their leader, a woman with white hair and scars different from Olivia's, stepped forward. "We know what you guard here," the woman declared. "The power of the living portal, the Guardian who can open the doors between worlds." Guardian rose to his full height, his fur rippling with contained galaxies. "You have no idea what you're talking about," his voice rumbled like distant thunder. "What you seek is not a portal, but destruction itself, The woman smiled, revealing teeth marked with ritual symbols. "We have studied the ancient texts for generations. We know that the Guardian contains the power to cross the veil between worlds, with the marked child as a catalyst." "Silence!" Ethan's voice cut through the air like a whip. For a moment, his eyes glowed with the same cosmic fire that inhabited Guardian's fur. "You're playing with forces you don't understand." The temperature dropped abruptly, and the shadows seemed to come to life. Olivia's scars began to glow, responding to an ancient power awakening within her. "We'll give you one chance," said Olivia, her voice mixing with echoes of her previous life. "Leave now and live to tell the story. Stay, and you'll face something your symbols won't be able to contain." As if to emphasize her words, Guardian began to partially transform, his figure fluctuating between bear and man, while living shadows danced around him. The entity contained within him stirred, making the air itself seem to distort. The younger hunters retreated, but their leader held her position, her eyes shining with fanaticism. "The portal must be opened," she insisted. "The power must be released." "Then so be it," Ethan whispered. What happened next would be etched in local legends for generations, the clearing filled with an impossible light, while reality itself seemed to bend and twist. The hunters saw, for a brief moment, what really inhabited Guardian, a living darkness that threatened to devour all the light in the world. When it was all over, the hunters fled, leaving behind their marked weapons and amulets. Only their leader remained on her knees, her hair now completely white from the terror of what she had witnessed. "Now you understand," said Olivia, helping her to her feet. "It's not a portal we guard here. It's a seal, a prison for something that must never be released." The woman nodded, trembling. "I'll spread the warning. No one else will come looking for this." As the solitary figure was lost among the trees, Olivia hugged Ethan, feeling the power that pulsed in his small body. Guardian approached them, his form once again stable, but his eyes containing the knowledge of millennia. "The moment approaches," said the Guardian. "The hunters were but an omen. The real challenge is yet to come." The mist closed around the cabin like a protective mantle, while the three contemplated the night sky, aware that their destiny was written in the stars that shone above them. The months that followed the encounter with the hunters brought a tense calm, like the stillness before a storm. Ethan, now in his 8th year, grew not only in stature, but in power. His abilities manifested in increasingly surprising ways. He could communicate with the forest animals, make plants grow with just a touch, and occasionally his eyes would shine with an inner light that seemed to contain entire universes. Olivia dedicated every free moment to deciphering the secrets of the manuscript, looking for clues about the final ritual that could break the cycle without releasing the darkness contained in Guardian. Her scars, now more pronounced than ever, often glowed in sync with the stars, as if the sky itself was trying to communicate with her. One night, as an electrical storm illuminated the sky, Ethan woke from an agitated dream. "I've seen it," he declared, with a voice that resonated with a supernatural echo. "The place where everything began and where everything must end." Guided by the child's visions, Olivia and Guardian ventured deeper into the forest than they had ever dared to go. The vegetation became denser and more ancient as they advanced, and the air seemed charged with a primordial energy. After days of travel, they arrived at a hidden clearing where time seemed to have stopped. There, covered by centuries of vegetation and protected by an invisible barrier of energy, stood a Native American temple that didn't appear on any known map. "The Temple of the Guardians," Guardian whispered, his voice mixing with the wind that blew between the ancient stones. "This is where I first transformed." The temple entrance was sealed with symbols that glowed with their own light. Ethan approached without fear, and upon touching the stone, the symbols began to rearrange themselves until they formed an opening. The interior of the temple was a labyrinth of chambers and corridors, each decorated with murals that told the story of the Guardians and the marked ones throughout the centuries. In the center, they found a circular room with an obsidian altar in the middle. "This is the place," said Ethan, his eyes glowing with the same cosmic fire that inhabited Guardian's fur. "This is where we must perform the ritual to break the cycle." Olivia studied the hieroglyphs on the walls, her mind filling with memories of past lives. "The ritual requires 3 elements," she explained. "The Guardian, the marked one, and..." The reborn sacrifice, Guardian completed, looking at Olivia with a mixture of sadness and determination. That's the secret I never revealed to you. In each cycle, the third element has been someone willing to give their life to maintain the seal. Olivia's heart raced as she understood the truth. That's why I was chosen to be reborn, because in my previous life, you offered yourself as a sacrifice, Guardian confirmed. But something went wrong and the ritual was left incomplete. That's why the cycle continued and why you were brought back. Ethan, with a maturity that went beyond his years, took Olivia's hand. But this time it's different, he said, because now we understand the true purpose of the ritual. As they explored the temple, they discovered chambers filled with ancient artifacts, crystal scepters that seemed to contain galaxies within them, ritual masks that whispered forgotten secrets, and an obsidian mirror that showed reflections of other worlds. In one of the deepest chambers, they found a fresco that showed the true nature of the entity contained within Guardian. It wasn't simply darkness, but a being of primordial chaos, capable of undoing reality itself. The Devourer of Light, Guardian explained, his voice laden with the weight of millennia. A being as ancient as the universe itself, banished to our world by forces that even I don't fully understand. As they studied the secrets of the temple, time seemed to flow differently. Days or weeks might have passed in the outside world, but within those ancient walls, Olivia, Ethan, and Guardian immersed themselves in knowledge that transcended time and space. Finally, on the eve of what Ethan proclaimed as the Night of Convergence, the three gathered in the central chamber. The obsidian altar pulsed with dark energy, and the symbols on the wall seemed to move of their own volition. "Tomorrow," said Ethan, his voice mixing with echoes of past lives, "when the stars align and the veil between worlds is thinnest, we will perform the ritual." Olivia looked at Guardian, who had assumed an intermediate form between man and beast, his fur rippling with contained galaxies. "Are you ready to be free?" she asked. Guardian nodded solemnly. "I've waited for this moment for centuries, but the price, we'll pay it together," Olivia interrupted, her voice firm. "This time we'll break the cycle the right way." That night, while Ethan slept, Olivia and Guardian remained awake, sharing memories of past lives and preparing for what was to come. The temple itself seemed to vibrate with anticipation, as if the ancient stones knew they were about to witness the end of a cycle that had lasted millennia. In the darkness of the night, Olivia's scars glowed like constellations on her skin, and Guardian's fur reflected the movement of the stars. Both knew that, whatever the outcome of the ritual, nothing would ever be the same again. The dawn of the decisive day brought with it an atmosphere charged with supernatural energy. The sky above the temple was tinged with impossible colors, and the surrounding vegetation seemed to vibrate with a strange frequency. Inside the central chamber, Olivia, Ethan, and Guardian prepared for the ritual that could change the course of reality itself. Ethan, dressed in a white robe adorned with ancestral symbols, stood in the center of the obsidian altar. His mark glowed with blinding intensity, pulsing to the rhythm of an invisible cosmic heart. "Before we begin," said the boy with a voice that resonated with echoes of all the past lives of the marked ones, "there's something you need to know. Something I've seen in my visions but couldn't understand until now." Olivia and Guardian approached, their own marks and scars glowing in response to the energy of the place. "The seal," Ethan continued, "is not just a prison for the Devourer of Light. It's a balance. Without the darkness that Guardian contains, our world would crumble." Guardian, in his hybrid form of man and beast, nodded gravely. "I always knew there was a greater purpose, but I could never see it clearly. The ancients," Ethan explained, "understood that light and darkness are two sides of the same coin. The Devourer of Light is not an evil being in the sense we understand. It's a primordial force necessary for cosmic balance." Olivia felt a shiver run down her spine. "Are you saying we can't simply get rid of it?" "No," the boy confirmed. "What we must do is restore the balance." The original ritual was incomplete. It wasn't about containing the Devourer, but harmonizing it with our world. As Ethan spoke, the symbols on the temple walls began to glow, revealing new patterns and meanings. Olivia, guided by memories of her past lives, began to understand the true nature of the ritual they were about to perform. "That's why the cycle continued," she murmured. Each generation of marked ones, each sacrifice, was an attempt to complete what was started centuries ago. Guardian approached the altar, his fur rippling with contained galaxies. Then, what is our true role here? Ethan extended his hands, touching Olivia and Guardian. At that instant, a shared vision flooded their minds. They saw the universe in its entirety, an infinite tapestry of intertwined light and darkness. The Devourer of Light was not a monster, but an essential part of this tapestry, a force that consumed dying stars so that new ones could be born. But something had disturbed this balance, dragging the Devourer into their world and distorting its nature. Our role, Ethan said when the vision ended, is to restore the balance. I, as the last marked one, am the bridge. Guardian, as the guardian, is the vessel. And you, Olivia, as the reborn sacrifice, are the key. Olivia felt her scars burn with a cold fire. What exactly must we do? We must merge with the Devourer, Ethan explained. Not to contain it, but to guide it back to its true purpose. Guardian has kept it in this plane for centuries. Now we must release it in the right way. The temple floor began to tremble gently, and a dark energy emanated from the obsidian altar. Guardian growled, struggling to maintain his form as the entity inside him stirred, sensing that the moment was approaching. But the price, Olivia began, remembering the warnings in the manuscript. Will be high, Ethan confirmed. None of us will ever be the same. We might cease to exist as individuals. But it's the only way to save not just our world, but the balance of the cosmos itself. Guardian stood up to his full height, his form fluctuating between man, beast, and something beyond both. I have carried this burden for millennia. I am ready for whatever is necessary. Olivia closed her eyes, feeling the weight of all her past lives, of all the incomplete sacrifices. I'm ready too, she finally said. Ethan smiled, a smile that contained the wisdom of countless generations. Then let us begin. The three positioned themselves around the altar, forming a perfect triangle. Ethan began to recite a chant in a language older than time itself, his words resonating with a power that made the temple stones vibrate. Olivia felt her scars opening, but instead of pain, she experienced a sensation of release. A golden light emanated from them, intertwining with the darkness that sprouted from Guardian's fur. The Devourer of Light, sensing that the moment had come, began to emerge. But this time, instead of the chaotic and destructive entity they had feared, they saw its true form, a being of incomprehensible beauty, made of void and stars. As the ritual reached its climax, the three felt their consciousnesses expanding, merging not only with each other, but with the entity itself. The temple filled with an impossible light, and for a moment, the veil between worlds dissolved completely. In that instant of cosmic union, Olivia, Ethan, and Guardian finally understood the true nature of their destiny and the role they had been destined to play since the beginning of time. The light and darkness danced in perfect harmony around the three figures in the center of the temple. Olivia, Ethan, and Guardian, united in body and spirit, found themselves in the eye of a cosmic hurricane. The Devourer of Light, now freed from its millennial prison, manifested as an entity of pure energy, neither good nor evil, but simply primordial. Ethan, his small body barely visible in the vortex of energy, spoke with a voice that was the sum of all the marked ones who had existed. I see the complete pattern now, he said. Every life, every sacrifice, every guardian. They were all necessary steps to reach this moment. Olivia, her scars glowing like living constellations, felt her consciousness expanding beyond the limits of her physical body. We are the weavers of destiny, she responded, finally understanding her true role. Guardian, his form fluctuating between all the shapes he had assumed throughout the centuries, growled with a voice that resonated with the power of the earth itself. And now we must complete the weaving. The Devourer of Light, sensing the opening of the cosmic portal, began to move. But instead of the destruction they had all feared, its presence brought a sense of renewal. The temple stones vibrated with new life, and outside, the entire forest seemed to awaken from a long sleep. However, keeping the portal open and guiding the Devourer back to its place in the cosmos required a price that went beyond the physical. We must merge completely, Ethan declared, not just among ourselves, but with the very fabric of reality. Olivia understood what that meant. It wasn't death that awaited them, but a transformation so profound that it amounted to the end of their individual existences. "Are we really ready for this?" she asked, though in her heart she already knew the answer. Guardian, in a last moment of human clarity, smiled with Jonathan's eyes. "I've waited centuries for this, to finally fulfill my true purpose." The three looked at each other for the last time as separate beings, each carrying with them the weight of countless lives and sacrifices. Then, in an act of unified will, they surrendered completely to the vortex of energy. The merger went beyond the physical or spiritual. Olivia felt her essence expanding, mixing with Guardian's ancestral wisdom and Ethan's primordial purity. Together, they became a living bridge, a conduit through which the Devourer of Light could return to its place in the great tapestry of the universe. As they guided the entity back to the depths of the cosmos, they experienced visions of realities beyond human comprehension, worlds being born and dying, galaxies dancing in eternal spirals, and the delicate balance that held the entire multiverse together. The process seemed to last eons and at the same time only an instant. When it finally ended, the temple fell silent. Where Olivia, Ethan, and Guardian had once stood, there was now a single entity, a being of light and shadow, with the wisdom of the Guardians, the power of the Marked Ones, and the cosmic understanding of the Devourer. This new entity rose, passing through the temple roof as if it were mist. Outside, the entire forest pulsed with new life. Animals emerged, sensing the change in the air. The mist, which for so long had hidden the secrets of the place, dissipated, revealing a transformed landscape. Sarah, who had sensed the change from her cabin, arrived at the temple clearing just in time to witness the end of the transformation. She saw how the entity rose towards the sky, leaving behind a trail of light that merged with the stars. But not everything had disappeared. In the center of the clearing, where the temple once stood, now grew an impossible tree. Its roots sank deep into the earth, while its branches seemed to touch the stars. Its bark glowed with changing symbols, and among its leaves, glimpses of other worlds could be seen. Sarah approached the tree, feeling the familiar presence of Olivia, Ethan, and Guardian in its essence. She understood that they hadn't gone, but had transformed into something greater, into guardians not just of this world, but of the cosmic balance itself. As time passed, the forest became a place of pilgrimage for those seeking wisdom and healing. The tree, which locals called the Tree of the Three, became the heart of a new kind of guardianship. Its fruits granted visions of the cosmos, and those who meditated under its branches often reported receiving guidance from three voices speaking in unison. The legend of the guardian bear, the marked child, and the woman with the sacred scars was passed down from generation to generation, but few understood the true magnitude of their sacrifice and transformation. On clear nights, when the stars shone with special intensity, the most sensitive swore they could see three figures walking between worlds: a bear made of galaxies, a child who carried the light of creation in his eyes, and a woman whose scars told the story of the universe. And so the cycle that had begun millennia ago finally came to its conclusion, not with an end, but with a new beginning. The balance had been restored, and though the price had been high, the sacrifice of Olivia, Ethan, and Guardian ensured that the eternal dance between light and darkness would continue, maintaining harmony in the great tapestry of the cosmos.